Welcome to the Halo Halo Creativity Uncovered interview series. Halo Halo is more than just an app. It's a space where artists and fans come together to celebrate web comics. We highlight Filipino stories and beyond, giving creators a platform to share their work with a global audience. Today, we're sitting down with incredible creator Patricio Ginelsa to talk about his work, process, and what drives him to tell stories through comics and film. Patricio is a film savant from Daly City, California, that has been filmmaking since 13 years old. Most well known for directing films such as critically acclaimed Lumpia with a Vengeance and producing award-winning film The Debut, he's here with us today to share his creative journey. This is Halo Halo. All right, thank you. So again, thank you for joining us today, Patricio. And to kick it off, how are you doing this week? What's something that made you smile?
Oh, I just finished my crowdfunding campaign to fund my first ever enamel pin collection for the first Lumpia movie. So I'm on a personal high right now. So I want to take the time to thank the backers who came out and supported that campaign. So yeah, I'm in a good mood. I'm in a good mood. The start of the new year has been tough. You know, we had the fires, and I had my one of my best friends, Ryan Fong, out there who lost his home. So I feel that even crowdfunding this campaign was hard because I'm also trying to, help raise funds for his GoFundMe, and so it was hard. I'm trying to still even make sure he's on the right foot and check in with him. So it's so. But today, this week has been a great week. I thank you all for inviting me to Halo Halo. So it's an honor.
Right. Can anybody buy those pins now that the crowdfunding's finished?
Yeah, no, I just posted pre-orders right now. It's on if you go to cuteheroes.net, it's all there. So yeah, no, you can pre-order it, and even though some of them are exclusive just to that campaign, we definitely have you can pre-order the whole pin set. My artist is Leroy David, so it was really a way for me to try to highlight, spotlight him because he actually drew. He was the first artist I ever worked with when we did the first Lumpia movie. And so I'm glad that even though we're super niche, that we're able to get that off the ground. So if people are interested, they can do that. Now, of course, we'll have some of those pins at some of the Comic Cons that will be appearing
Mhm.
this year. So it's just more merch for us. So yeah,
That's great. Getting more, being able to get a piece of lumpia, right? Lumpia with a
yeah,
vengeance.
yeah.
Yeah.
Celebrating our Lumpia love. It's always awesome. Now I'm hungry.
Definitely. And speaking of, I love your background, by the way.
Yes, it's two Lumpia sticks. Yeah, this is a retro, and this is how nerdy this is my Generation X here because it's totally my 80s retro style and grid. So yeah, no, it's one of my favorite screensavers, and this is like one of my pandemic projects, right? Like I learned how to do this as part of developing the movie stuff. So it was fun. I've kept this on Zoom as a way to hypnotize people, into to getting hungry and like, oh, I need some lumpia now in my life.
Right.
Is is that interest, right? To always learn something new. Is that how you even how you got started in filmmaking? Just or
Yeah, yeah,
you
no.
always knew?
I started filmmaking because I picked up my dad's camcorder. It's. I always joke that if I was growing up now, today's times, I'd probably not be interested in filmmaking. I think because everyone now has a camera and a phone, but back then, picking up my dad's camcorder and just really shooting movies with my neighborhood, that kind of created my own unique identity. I grew up in Daly City, California, and for those folks who don't know, that's if you're a Filipino growing up in my town and in school, like, and mostly Filipinos were getting to dancing and DJing. Qbert was like in the Scratch Pickles, like they were the cool folks. Almost every Filipino that grew up that wanted became a DJ or a mobile DJ. So it was a. I always joke that the most popular high school student, the most popular student in high school wasn't necessarily the jock. It was the DJ that could get you into the high school dance. And so I didn't want to. I didn't know music. I wasn't good in DJing, and so being a filmmaker and I was always known as a guy with my camcorder walking around. That became my identity, and so yeah, no, that's. that's what drew me really initially to filmmaking was really, and you can't filming you can't you can't make movies or do filmmaking by yourself, right? So I utilized my friends and my kid neighbors as my actors.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And since those early days, how has your storytelling style evolved over the years?
I mean, look, I think the more experiences I accumulate, that obviously improves your storytelling. I mean, the more struggle I endure, the more you travel. I mean, a lot of it. I mean, obviously becoming a husband and a father. I mean, that can only enrich your filmmaking more, right? So the more I play in film in any space, whether it's filmmaking, comic books now, that can only make my storytelling stronger, right? And see what the audience responds to. I think that's yeah. So obviously, I think before it was always based on other films and a lot of the comic books I read, uh, but I think the more experiences you do, it can only enrich your filmmaking
Yeah,
or
that's great.
storytelling. Yeah.
And have you changed this process and the style when you had to create your mobile DJ comic books, ones and twos? Like it's a different format, right?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I got to the comic book space, um, even though I grew up reading comic books, right? Like the comic book space came about because I was marketing, promoting Lumpia with a Vengeance, and luckily our backers crowdfunded that during the pandemic. My creative process has always been, I mean, it's weird because when I was so I went to USC Film School, so at USC Film School, I always look back at my USC student films. And if you looked at them, I'm not ashamed of them, not necessarily, but you look at I was doing the stories were about aliens. It was about it was very high concept and very mainstream. It wasn't really until I worked on the debut. And anyone who's Filipino-American knows the debut, hopefully. But it was working on that film that really made me realize that making stories about the Filipino-American experience was possible. And I made that my responsibility for anything I made. When I started getting to the music video space, when I started doing a lot of indie music videos, and then obviously went to Lumpia, and then Lumpia with a Vengeance, and then now the comic books. So my style has always stayed true to try to incorporate a lot of the aspects of my own heritage and my community. But a lot of it always comes down to the early movies, even to my kid heroes. It's always about having fun. It's always about bringing out the kid in me. A lot of my own sensibilities of growing up, right? And people always think about filmmaking, and for me, it's always not necessarily filmmaking. It's community building. It's community making. It's not fundraising, but community raising, I guess. I'm trying to find a word, but I think that's the kind of my mission, regardless of whatever space I'm in. And now I forgot what the original question was. That, yeah.
And because it's really interesting how thinking of it from the community perspective, right, is where you start. Can you just tell us a little bit more, like how does an idea start to form and then get refined before it becomes an official project?
It depends on what the project is, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I always look back at the Black Eyed Peas Applesauce video, which was probably the first. I mean, nothing against the debut. That was my start, right, in the industry. But when I was handed the Black Eyed Peas Applesauce video, the origins of even being there was very unorthodox. I didn't. It's not like it. In the music video world, you pitch it to the label or whatever.
Mhm.
I was actually inspired. My dad had passed, and I was inspired by the song, this Tagalog song that was appearing on Elefunk. And I just therapeutically just wrote a whole treatment, dealing with having to visit my uncle, my dad's brother, and breaking the news to him at the retirement home. And then the song came in, and this vision just came in. I just wrote it just to let it out. And then I just gave it to a friend who happened to know the Peas, not thinking that they would call me months later and tell me we should do this project together, right? So it was the first time I had to deal with how I'm giving this mainstream platform, and so again, where how does it become okay? So I'm already given an opportunity. They really liked the story or this treatment I had, which is unorthodox. It really takes me to a retirement home. I don't know how many you have to watch the Apple Sign to understand what it is, and it also gave me a chance to talk about what was a hot topic issue then, the World War II veterans, the veteranos that were getting their pay, and so to weave that in was really and then and would it work in a mainstream platform? Well, for me, it's you know, can I inject a lot of my heritage and my culture in that? But I think why I'm most proud of it and why the Apple song to this day is like really, and it's hard, and it is to this day still my favorite and probably my best creative project to date. Because not only was I able to inject a little bit of my community in it and a little bit of our history, in it, but I was also include my family, and so my uncle, who's actually featured in that video, was a part of it. And then later did I know that even though he plays a veteran in that video, he passed away not too long even after we shot that. And I found out at his funeral that he himself was a veteran, but never told anyone. It was just kind of weird. It was weird. And so you talk about how it injects life. Well, I think a lot of it was already, I already knew I treated that project, and because this is the debut, I went to the school of the debut, so this is how it taught me was that if I'm given this unique opportunity to talk about it, I'm only given this 3-minute opportunity to talk about it in a mainstream place. How do I talk about or inject the community into it? And I guess for me, it's a job well done when someone sees that video and they say, "Oh, what's going on here?" And they Google what the Filipino World War II veterans are talking about. And for them to learn more about it, then I felt I did my job. Even though in reality, it's really to sell more records for the label. But the other thing that happened about that video was it also told everyone that the Filipino member of the Black Eyed Peas was Apple the App. It wasn't like he became the Bob Marley of the Philippines because of this music video. It was almost his coming out. So in a way, I feel I had a little part in introducing Apple the App, even though Apple's been in the industry for so long. That's a long answer. I'm sorry. I don't. Yeah.
I
But yeah.
just love that take on when you can also think of your work as a doorway, right? For
hmm
people to walk into and then get exposed to even a richer set of information or person or a story or a
I think
community.
that's the best way to put it. I think when I think of something, I try to feel how do I become a gateway, an entry level to someone. I mean, much like how I did Lumpia, right? Like you assume that everyone knows what Lumpia is, but I know using that because food is always the best gateway to any culture, right? So to use that to gateway into the stories I want to talk about. I always say that even though people will know me mostly about lumpia, and if you watch the trailer, it's like, oh, it's the guy that throws lumpia. That's the gimmick. But if you actually watch the movie or read the comics, it's actually more than that. There's a little bit of my community again, heritage in there, and hoping that even though the gimmick gets you there, hoping that the stories I'm telling will keep people reading or watching. So people are usually turned off. People say, too jokey, too corny. It's a shame because if they actually deep dive into the film and actually watch the movie, much more than about a guy that throws lumpia and uses it as a weapon.
Definitely. And you're talking a lot about how you incorporate community and humor and, just like the broader Filipino experience into all your films. And we were just curious, how do you balance this staying true to your roots, staying true to your Filipino identity while making films that also appeal to broader audiences?
Um, it's weird because I don't try to see it that way in terms of because I'll go insane just trying to like I try to first try to figure out what's entertaining first, right?
Mhm.
And then try to figure out because I feel like I'm already a nerd of like American pop culture. I obviously love my community and my culture. So I feel like if the whatever I'm making satisfies me, then I feel that there's got to be other folks who are like me, who are on the same page as me, who will enjoy it. I try not to think about what's mainstream and all this and that, because if I then I go back, harking back to the USC days when I was so stressed out just thinking about what is that magic formula, what is that magic short film that will get me noticed, that will get me an agent, that will. I mean, this is what USC Film School was about. It was about that hustle because it was how do you get to that next level? How do you get people to notice you? How do you rise above the competition? And I had not really found my voice back then, you know? Um, and so I think when and the debut played a big part of it, as I started touring around. I think making the movie was one thing, but I think when we had to tour around with that film for 2 years, and that's even a whole story. We had to drive our car cross country twice in a row, and actually I had the film in the car, and we would put it in theaters, and just seeing the love of the community that came out. When you saw other pockets of Filipinos I didn't even know existed in like Virginia Beach and in Chicago and New Jersey, and that for me informed. Uh, it just inspired me, I guess. So I now knew that the I felt that whatever I was, or I felt confident that the stuff I was making, that there'd be other people that would enjoy it as well, not just in California, in my own circle, but out there as well. So yeah, I hope that answered that question.
I think you just gave us the secret to why you have such dedicated fans because it's just you in your work and then they're resonating with it, right? They're like, yes, that's like me too. Um,
Yeah, and this is before social
yeah.
media. I mean, when you actually meet some of the communities and just the other folks who are playing in the space and just uplifting their communities. It's the community leaders, it's the students, it's very inspiring. I mean, a lot of the folks who to this day I lean on for advice and consult with are folks I met 20 years ago during the debut. A lot of my mailing lists are still folks who I met or watched the debut. So yeah, no, I think I always say I went, even though I went to USC Film School, my real film school was the debut. And if there's anything you get out of this interview is like, if you're a filmmaker, just watch the debut. If you haven't even heard about, seen it, watch the debut. That's only my thing. Don't even watch about Lumpia Vengeance. That's kind of an extension. That's like if you want to take my class on Filipino-American representation in media, I guess.
Definitely. Yeah, well, I mean, we'll get to it. And kind of on that same end, you're bringing a lot of these Filipino stories into the media. And we just want to ask, what's been your biggest challenge bringing these stories to Hollywood and, to the larger indie film scene?
I mean, it's always going to be money. I mean, that's all. I mean, luckily, I got into the crowdfunding space. Very fortunate enough to have backers and supporters who support a lot of the projects. I mean, when I kickstarted Lumpia with a Vengeance, this that was a test to see if there was still uh, if the appetite really for these kind of movies was still out there. This was back in 2013, right? I think by the time the movie came out, that luckily, I mean, fortunate for us, there were a lot more things. Social media blew up, a lot more influencers. So there's now a ton of information now about Filipino American space. But for me, the struggle's always been money and buy-in. How many folks have watched Debut? How many people have watched The Flip Side? How many people actually listen to music or know who Jocelyn Enriquez is and Kai? So there's even our own history. And I'm not talking about Filipino history, the Philippines. That's in its own right genre, but I'm talking about just North American. When I say even Filipino Canadian, I mean I talk about who's seen Romeo Candido's films, like Lola's Child, and I mean there's so much history, and a lot of it is things that if we don't remember, even though that catalog of stuff, film and music that has a lot of them have been hit mainstream and maintained that history, then who will? So that's why I always say that the for us creatives is like who play in the space, and I've been in the space for so long, is that how many people actually consume that, and actually want to know more about it. I mean, we're entering this period now where now being woke is like negative, And that's hard to hear that even like our own history, it's like, you know, because for me, woke has always been about knowing more about even our history of how we immigrated here and a lot of stories here, but even pop culture wise, you know. So anyway, I know that's a deeper conversation, but I think that's always been the challenge is that how I save receipts, you know, so how many people have actually watched Lupi with a Vengeance? Because I even struggle to even, you know, financially even break even with that film. And that's a whole nother story. And I know a lot of other fellow creatives who struggle financially, right? Our passion is bigger than our wallets, unfortunately. And so that's why I always go back to the raising, community education wise, making people aware of it, and also trying to spotlight other creatives out there in whatever space I play in.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, the work that, you creatives do is really important, especially when you're sharing these stories. It's, such a shame in some, places or some instances that you have to, struggle with that kind of financial aspect to filmmaking. I hear that a lot.
Oh,
And
yeah, I
can
know a
I,
lot of people that give up because they just went broke. I mean, the debut, a lot of people still remember that, but the film, I was just one of the producers of that. But man, I mean, we could talk like even, I mean, they're good friends of mine. Even they went to, they struggled, and they they lost a lot of money, So I'm glad people are discovering the debut the first time. But that movie, it was a lot of behind the scenes. There's a lot of to this day still, hasn't really got its money back, I guess I could say.
It's 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 such a challenge to be able to even for the first time, right? Like you talk about continuing it, but even the first time to get the work out there. Are you seeing a lot of Filipino creators entering the scene now to be able to come into Hollywood and enter the global entertainment industry?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was talking about 2013. I think a lot of the only reason why Lupin Adventures got greenlit and got kickstarted, even though the money goal was small, was because I think people were really hungry for that kind of representation. And then fast
Mhm.
forward, 7 years, 8 years later, when our movie finally did come out, I mean, Diane Paragas did Yellow Rose, and there were a lot of other films I can't really, but there are a lot of filmmakers coming up who were because of now social media and then just the generation that wants to know. I think there's a lot of people that now who are creatives who are getting to the space, and whether it's a YouTube channel or even social media or whatever space they're in, there's a lot more. I think all you have to do is just go to YouTube and Google it, and there's always something about any other themes they're doing. Um, but I think the challenge is always is about even in the comic book space, there's definitely a lot more. I entered this pretty late in the game, and the fact that I'm working with uh, artists and creatives like Will Patricio, just folks who I look up to, who work for the mainstream companies like Marvel, DC. I mean, that's awesome, right? And because I've been in this space now for 4 years and being part of the indie comic book community, I got to meet other creators. A lot of them are in Hollow Hollow, right? And so yes, you can see people getting into the space who are trying to find other platforms, even other filmmakers trying to get into the comic book space because they're hungry to get these things out, and in whatever way they can get their stories out and people see and notice who they are, I'm all for it. So, but yeah, no, but the struggle is always again longevity wise, how the business thing is always something I struggle with. I'm always trying to learn more about, right? Because a lot of it is trying to raise awareness of your brand, trying to get more readers and more folks, but also to make sure that you don't have how much of your own money you get to fund this, right? And the crowdfunding campaigns have been fun for us, but I would say that none of our campaigns ever funds 100% to really what it goes into making a lot of our own projects, whether it be a comic book or a film or even this pin collection I just talked about earlier. So
Definitely. Yeah, and more on this end of, connecting with your fan base and, getting this more readership. Your fans can find your new Mix number one coming out in WonderCon next month. Is that right? Could you
yes,
tell?
yes, yeah. Which is really we're in Hollow Hollow, which Mix is like the English translations for Halo Halo. And so Mix Mix is kind of definitely a continuation of our deep fried universe, DFU, the Lumpia deep fried universe, and so it is part of our ongoing chapter. So we've been able to continue the story beyond Lumpia with a Vengeance, and so a lot of folks have gravitated towards the comic book end. And in the comic book space, you don't have to worry about budgets. Well, budget meaning like production budget explosions. So we've gone full out. We have Mix has a like an ube monster, kind of like, and we have Gulaman and Lanka and like so all the members of the super and they're anti-heroes. So it's another fun way to play with food. But again, what's unique about Mix Mix number one is that even though they're anti-heroes, they're kind of like my version of the Suicide Squad in a way. But like V themselves are biracial. So there's a mix of different ethnicities. They're like a half Filipino or half this. So I've been working with Lauren Lola, one of my co-writers. She's been amazing working on Mix. So it gave me a chance to kind of learn more about that community. Yeah, it's just fun and it makes you want to eat some halo halo afterwards. But we'll be
It's
WonderCon.
really,
That's our big thing, WonderCon.
yeah. And it's really interesting that, again, it's bringing back in the idea of the gateway. Because you
Yeah.
even this now you're introducing them to another, a new culture. Um, yeah.
Definitely. And just as, like a final question on our end, if you could give one piece of advice to young Filipino filmmakers trying to tell their own stories, what would you tell them?
Um, I think the stay authentic. I think I always stay authentic while you're trying to find your voice, right? I think it took me a while to find my voice and be authentic. If I wasn't part of the debut, I think I'd be making alien movies, Men in Black 6 maybe. I don't know. And then don't be scared to fail. I think you have to fail and put yourself out there. I think a lot of people are so scared to put their stuff because they want everything out there to be perfect, and you just have to be open to criticism. And but once you find your voice and you love it and people dig it, oh, it's the best feeling ever. So much so that I'm still trying to justify a guy throwing lumpia as a weapon. So,
Scary, right? It's scary to put yourself out there, that your authentic self, and it's a very vulnerable thing.
oh, I love trolls. I love people who criticize. It makes me think that I'm on the right path.
Mm.
I love it. I love constructive criticism is always something that I love. I enjoy. I don't think my stuff is the stuff out there, and I'm still learning. I'm learning and experiencing. I like learning new things. Like right now, the pin collection. Oh my God, I'm like getting to this, knowing the difference with enamel pin, soft and hard, and it's like I love it. It's just the creative side of me just loves creating stuff. So I'm just glad people are still on board of whatever space I'm playing in. So whether it's comic books and film and now pins, yay, and toys, it's crazy.
Really exciting
Awesome.
stuff. So I think as we are coming over to the end of our time here today, we just wanted to thank you again, Patricio, for sitting down with us and talking about your storytelling with your community, how you're having your voice heard in these spaces. And again, all your experiences, producing and directing the Debut, Lumpia, and also the Black Eyed Peas music videos, another way in which you're bringing Filipino culture to this global stage. And just as a reminder for our viewers, again, we have a Lumpia with a Vengeance comic book on Halo Halo right now. And as well, Patricio does have his ones and twos comic book coming out, his enamel pins, and his Mix number one coming to WonderCon. So again, be on the lookout for that. And everyone, thank you again for joining us on Halo Halo with Patricio. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.